Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Creators Connect series. My name is Luca, but you can call me that camera guy. If you are a channel subscriber, thank you so much for your love and support. I truly appreciate it. If you are new here, please consider subscribing if you like this video. And today's episode of the show, we're joined by a storyteller, poet, writer, photographer, basically all things creative, and his name is SHALdo. I first got wind of him when a good friend of mine sent me an Instagram video, and in that video, SHALdo was going over and reciting one of his poems. I fell in love with the poem. I fell in love with the artistic concept that was shown in the video as well. I was like, I have to get this guy on the show. So I'm super grateful that I had a chance to sit down and chat with him. And I'm super excited for you guys to hear what he has to say. In the show, SHALdo and I talk about the meaning of his name, SHALdo. And it's a pretty interesting story if you ask me. You need to stick around to the end to hear about that. But we also talk about the philosophy and the memory that SHALdo wants to leave in people's minds. When people think about SHALdo, what does he want them to think about? What does he want them to remember him by? So just sit back, relax, and let's connect with SHALdo. Let's go. Okay, so thank you so much, my man, for coming through and being here and sitting with me. It's super encouraging that you can take time out of your schedule. I know it's a bit of a different schedule now with the lockdown and everything, but nonetheless, thank you for being here, sitting down with me and chatting over a couple of things. Really appreciate having you here.
Mighty thanks for having me, Luca. It's I think you're one of the most gracious people I've been talking to. We were supposed to have done this last year.
Last year, yeah.
You've been, you've been quite patient with someone such as myself.
No, I mean, that's what it is. Hey, I mean, this creative world we live in, everybody's got different schedules, and over and above different schedules, it's been a really hectic and interesting year. So you got to give people some time, because tomorrow you're the one needing a little bit of, gracious time and things like that. So I think it's fair.
Man. I appreciate that.
It's fair. It's fine. But I'm glad we're finally getting to do this. And I think my first question would be that you are into a lot of things, man. I've been on your socials, and I've seen the things that you've done. A lot of poetry, a lot of writing, a lot of creative video, a lot of music as well, over and above that. But you're like, those things don't particularly define you. You did a video and you're talking about how people woke up to people and they're like, it was such an interesting topic of conversation, but I enjoyed listening to it. And you're like, those things don't define me. I'm more of a storyteller. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
I've struggled defining myself. So I really struggle with definitions.
Yeah.
And, when people ask me what I do, whenever I'm having conversations of this sort, I always say, my work is quite inconsequential in conversations. Like, I enjoy what I do, but let's not start the conversation there. This is what I tell people.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've labeled myself a poet. I've labeled myself a writer, photographer at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Just various art forms that I've delved into, different things. But I realized late that essentially I'm a storyteller. One of my favorite local poets called Bradley Odillo, he says that the beauty of art is its expression, but the intent of art is communication. And I think things like media serve as channels and tools through which, people can express themselves artistically. So essentially, I'm a storyteller. Sometimes the best way to tell this story is photography. Sometimes it's radio. For me, most frequently, it's poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, let's tell our stories. But when we're getting into conversations, when people ask, I think there's a form of sizing up. I can speak a certain way, dress a certain way, and if I tell you, what are you gonna say? Are you gonna look at me different? So that's what I mean when I say I'm a storyteller. I think all of us are. Some of us more exclaimed in storytelling than others, but essentially we're all just, it's life in itself is one grand story. The human experience is just one big story, and we're each playing our part, and as we live through it, we realize just how our stories are interconnected. How someone's tiny little story plays to the biggest story,
the biggest story,
and vice versa, for sure, yeah.
And that's what it is. I think about moments where you meet someone and you're like, oh, and you're like, oh, what a small world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like everyone's little story always adds up to build up this grand and bigger story. And it's a beautiful thing. And speaking of stories, you also talk about in one of your videos that I was watching how you do these poems and you release these poems. And I mean, there's such great reads. I love all of them. But you're like, they are parts as well of a much bigger and grand story. They're more like layers. These poems you release, and all this content you release, they're layers to this one big story that you're building up. My question is, what is that story? What are you building at? Do you even know, or are we allowed to know that at this point?
I had a feeling you're gonna ask that. I've had, so when I go quiet on my socials, people ask, what are you working on? Are you doing something?
I'm always intrigued. I'm always waiting. I'm like, what's next? What is next?
And I think it fascinates me because my socials are not that big. And, well, for people watching this, listening to this, please go to my Twitter _SHALdo and follow that thing.
Okay.
Twitter did me dirty, hey? And I had to start my Twitter account all over.
I'm going to go into Twitter right now as we speak and follow
_SHALdo and follow. Like, the numbers are sad right now, hey? We have to start again.
But we build, we go, we move.
For sure. So I don't want to give too much away. But yeah, I'm quite excited about what's coming. But that's all I can say for now. That's all I can say.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. We don't want to push buttons. I think I like it when there's a lot of suspense building up, and we're definitely waiting to see what you have going on. But you did mention something very interesting just now. You're like, you find it very interesting because your socials aren't that big. When people hit you up and they ask, what are you working on? And they're impatiently waiting for your next release and next piece of art that you're creating. How does that make you feel to know that despite the fact that you feel like your socials aren't that big, but there are people out there, individuals out there who are waiting on your work like it's bread?
I think for me, it's quite humbling to begin with. Just to have anyone's attention, even if it's one person, it's quite humbling. And I think in all things that I do, I always emphasize, to artists that we speak to an audience of one.
Yeah.
For people such as myself who are spiritually inclined, first and foremost, I'm speaking to God. He's my number one audience and self. And if people can relate, within that process of storytelling, it's such a beautiful thing. But as far as looking at my numbers and the amount of engagement I get, it reinforces. I always tell people this, like, if you're looking at things like digital marketing, I think it's becoming quite significant. Engagement is becoming a lot more significant than just having grand numbers.
Yep.
And yeah, man, I think I'm happy. I'm always really incredibly humbled when people hit me up. Even with seemingly trivial things like WhatsApp. I could put a WhatsApp status, and I really like gaslighting people sometimes, just for combo.
You be that guy,
and people respond. People respond, and sometimes I'll poke people with something that I don't necessarily align and believe in, but I just really want to hear views.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, like I remember one thing I said to people. So if in the next 150 years or so, a kid dreams about SHALdo, does that mean, SHALdo was some terrible spirits or, Mweyatrina type vibes, and essentially all I was trying to say there is that we should not demonize ancestors, we should not demonize the people that have come before us. Of course, there is some darkness that can be associated to people, who lived before we lived, but not all the time. There's quite a lot we could learn from our ancestors and so forth. And just that celebrating our heritage, celebrating Nambuena na Seguru, trying to learn their stories, learning the history and understanding how it informs the way we live today and how the manner in which we're living today is informing our future as well.
I like that. You actually pick a cherry from a question that I was going to ask, and that's talking about SHALdo in the future and like what you're trying to build now and
Mm,
the community you're trying to engage with and the influence you're trying to have. How would you like people to remember you? Or when they think about you a couple years from now, and they're like, when the name SHALdo comes to mind, what do you want them to think about? What do you want them to remember? How do you want your name to have an impact, around?
that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So I'm madly obsessed with legacy.
Okay.
Madly obsessed with legacy, and I think that stems from my late grandfather, my late paternal grandfather. It's the manner in which he lived his life, and it wasn't until he passed away that I realized the amount of wisdom that he left for us, and even like material things that he left for us. And this is a guy who stopped his education at the age of 12.
Sure.
But he did quite a lot with his life. I think last year 2020 was a year in which a lot of us really got an opportunity to reflect.
Yeah, that's true.
I try to live my life now with a sense of urgency. Yeah, I try to tell myself you're not gonna be here forever, so what do I want to live though? Gosh, without meandering. Man, essentially, I think freedom. I want people to be
Free.
to get to a point where they're free. I want people to be free, and
Mentally, physically, free, emotionally.
in absolutely all aspects, but primarily, speaking to the psycho-emotional freedom, spiritual freedom. I think if we're free in our minds and our spirits, there's really a lot that we can accomplish. Gosh. It's a difficult question because
Take your time.
there's a lot.
There's a lot. I can imagine, but take your time with it. There's really no pressure.
There's a lot, and it's all very cliche, but there's a lot of truth to things like love. I want people to be able to recognize love within themselves. We're created in the image of God, and God is love. So by virtue, we are love. So just to have a true understanding of what that means to be love, to give love, to exude love. I want to give. I want to give love. I want to just being able to impact lives, even in seemingly trivial ways, to live with intention. So much so, if it means, like in the neighborhood that I live in, there's some guys, who just run the streets. I see them regularly, and just them that say, recently one of the guys was like, "Go the guy New Year's," and he was surprised one day when I got him a beer. I don't drink myself like that. He was, but it's like, we trying to talk. I would hope to have a conversation, trying to connect for sure. So sometimes you buy your way into things like that. Sometimes it's just a conversation. But yeah, more than anything, I want to give love. I want to give hope. I want us to be able to express, to tell our stories, and just multiple themes, really, freedom and so forth. So I'd say essentially, above all else, love and light. That's it for me.
And I love your answer so much. And twice now you've brought up, in two of your answers now you've brought up God. You talked about God, and I think it's pretty plain to see that He does have a huge influence on the content that you create and the life that you're living.
Sure.
And you mentioned one thing in one of your poems, and you're like, worship is not defined by the worshiper. Worship is defined by the one who's being worshipped. And I know that the concept of worship in itself can take many different forms. And even through the content that we release, we can be, in a form and in a process of worshiping God. But what did you mean by that statement? What did you notice? Or what were you thinking about? What were you feeling at the time that inspired you to write that down and put it in the poem?
Life in itself needs to be a form of worship.
Yeah.
So much so, even if you're just walking down the street, you're singing, it shouldn't merely be praise and worship as we know it in church
Yes,
or
yes,
whatever.
yes.
You know, it has to be a lifestyle where it's just a part of your fiber and your being. Um, but I think, how do I explain that one? It's we don't decide what worship is when we say we're worshiping. I'm a worshiper. No, it's who you're sending it to. You know, that's what makes the difference. If I decide to worship my craft, I might think that's grand, I might think that's whatever, but it will never be the same in comparison to me worshiping God.
Yeah.
You know, so just the manner of worship, what we call worship, our perception of it. I really think we will never even fully understand the intimacy of worship, just because of how grand, just because of the magnitude of God, really. You know, I think things like speaking in tongues fascinate me. Things like the ability to connect to a song emotionally in a language you don't understand. So I think art is very, and let me not say art, but creation particularly, just creativity fascinates me. And I think that's like perhaps one of the most grand reflections of the DNA of God, creativity. So, and you know, I mean, I might be biased because I'm a creative person myself, but just being able to create something out of nothing is like, man, you know, let there be light, and there was light. It's crazy.
I mean, everything that we do know today, all the colors, all the concepts, is 100% inspired by him, which is like,
for sure,
from nothing to something.
And you know what? One of the things I always say, sorry to cut you.
No problem.
One of the things I always say is that, think about there's in our bid as creatives, even creators, in our pursuit of creating things or whatever, in our expression, we can never truly say certain things. There's certain things that are within us. We recognize them, we identify them, but we can't communicate them. We can't express them with the accuracy they demand.
Yeah.
But there are things like hugs, for instance. Just how you can have a bad day and somebody hugs you, that transforms your day.
Yeah.
That fascinates me.
Yeah.
You know, things like taste. How you can have, like, you know, a magical experience tasting different foods. Things like color and the ability, just vision, the ability to see how you've got, you know, multiple colors at the pop of one entering through your eyes.
Yeah.
So senses are very, I fancy myself a very sensual person in my art. So I think core elements in all art forms for me, color, texture, and sound. You know, and yeah, and I feel God is, that was the genesis. You know,
that is literally all encompassing, and I appreciate how. I think it's something I was going to ask, but you've already answered it. I appreciate how there is so much detail in your creativity. It's like a lot of the times people get to a point where creating creativity and releasing content stops being about them genuinely enjoying it and genuinely appreciating the process, but more of getting the numbers out. You know, it becomes a thing where I want to get as much out as possible to as many people as possible so that I can be seen by as many people as possible. And they lose why they started creating content in the first place, why they started or walked into this creative journey in the first place. And I really appreciate seeing you still in a position where you see the small, minuscule things within that process that still make you happy and that you still find joy in. And I pray that it may stay like that, you know, forever with you, and not just for you, but just like in every creative out there, to always remember why you stepped into this journey in the first place. And if you never lose sight of that, you constantly produce really good content, I feel.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm a flawed man, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think we
That's
all are.
what,
I think we all are.
yeah. But I you know what I think it is? I think we now, with how big pop culture has become, and just the economy that drives it,
Yeah.
we're in a space where we now have, it's sad in itself, to me at least. It's sad that you've got what you consider high art,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just got, like, for lack of a better phrase, pop art.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a lot of artists who are popular. You've got a lot of pop arts, I'd say, but
Yes.
are they necessarily artists? So that's one of the things for me. It's like, we can talk, if we're gonna have a conversation about popularity. That's one thing. We're gonna have a conversation about how much you've made off of your craft, and rightfully so. There's a certain amount of work it takes to be able to generate that. Nothing away from such people. I think
Yep.
every artist at some point, you need to be very mindful of being able to monetize your craft.
Yep.
So like, if you look at, like, for instance, my socials lately, I don't put a lot of my work anymore. It's mostly just vibes, because like pay me. You gotta pay me for this.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
But yeah, really, just quickly, you've got a lot of people who want to fit in with the popular, and
Mhm.
they want to label themselves artists, but they're not really. And I mean, it's tricky talking in this manner, because people can then ask you, who do you think you are?
You are.
Do you think, do you think you're the God that can decide such and such as an artist, and so and so? They're not. But I mean, they just, there's a certain manner in which, a pattern of thought you need to have. There's your psychological makeup as a creative person. And I don't even think we go around labeling ourselves artists or creators. We just really have this, like, I think the desire to share certain things and express has to be much, much stronger than all the other semantics of, is there money involved, are people liking it?
Yeah.
The art was there before you. It'll be there after you. During a period, you got to service it.
Yeah.
There's nothing special about me. There's nothing special about so and so. It's a beautiful thing to be in service to whatever art form you express in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I was looking at your socials as well, and I think your Instagram goes back to about 2015, and that's how far I can go back in terms of you being a content creator and being a creative. But I'm pretty sure it goes way beyond that and way before 2015. The question is, what's your earliest memory of you writing or wanting to write and be a poet and do all these creative things? How far back can you think that, this is when I first realized this is what I wanted to do for sure?
I think I've always been writing. It's a funny story. When I was in grade 5, I wrote an essay, and my teacher at the time was one of the people who actually inspired me to write. My teacher at the time, Mr. Zulu.
Yeah.
He was so impressed by what I wrote. He thought my dad had written it for me. So he was like,
for real?
Yeah. It was like, yeah, man, I'm not happy. Don't let your parents write for you.
Wow.
Went on in a bit of a rant, got in touch with my dad, and my dad was unaware that my dad read the story, and he was quite amazed. Looking back at it, I mean, it's not like wow, but for the age of the time, just the technical things I was doing with the words, even as I look back, it impresses me, because already I was playing with metaphors at such an age. So I've been writing for as long as I can remember.
Wow.
I always loved writing. My sister who follows after me is about a decade younger, so I spent about 10 years as an only child, and my only homies were my parents and their friends, So I dug into books, then I dug into music, and just listening to what people were doing in music, reading what people were doing with words in books. I fell in love with the idea of creating my own world, an alternative world to that which I was living, one that I can control. But, the more you write, the more you realize, I actually can't control this. There's certain things that the story is telling me as I write, which fascinates me. And, like, now that I'm grown, I think it is a spiritual process. Sometimes God genuinely is speaking through you as you know, you're blessed in being the first recipient of whatever it is he wants to do, but essentially it's God speaking through you. So yeah, it's been a while, but the most vivid memory when I then said to myself I want to perform poetry must have been maybe 2009.
Wow,
maybe
that's
2009
way
or
back. That is way back.
2000. Maybe not. I really don't remember, but yeah, it's around those. It's about 10 or so years ago.
Wow.
There was a concert. Was it a concert? No, it was like a praise and worship type thing, you know, at a church somewhere.
Yeah.
And so profound performed, and so profound did. What does he call it? I always call it mathematics, and every time I call it mathematics, he corrects me. But he did an amazing piece on mathematics.
Okay.
And I was so blown away. Then Bradley Odillo performed, and Bradley Odillo said something during that piece. He said, "The beauty of art is its expression, but the intent of art is communication." I stuck with that to this very day, so much so it's become my artistic philosophy.
Wow.
And then I was aware, like, man, I've been writing already. Like, I want to do what they're doing. I want to be on stage. I want to speak. I want to connect. I can do that. And yeah, a few years later, having gone to university, I mean, I had already started writing in high school. In high school, I'd sort of kind of do it, debate as well, quite a bit of debate. It's probably the only thing I was most successful at in high school.
That's funny.
You know, yeah, so quite a lot of speaking then just really became a huge part of my life. But it wasn't until I got to university that I really started sort of finessing certain things. And, you know, my first memorable performance was 2014. And I got paid for it, and I was so excited.
You're so stoked.
You know, like, went to my parents. I went to my parents and I told them, guys, you see, there's a future in this.
There is a future.
You know, yeah. So, but bless their hearts, they've always been supportive.
I mean, I think that's very important actually in this day and age to have parents with a sort of slightly shifted, not so generic mindset, because a lot of our creative minds are being suffocated in not being able to express themselves because of the homes they live in. So I think it's very important for us who have that privilege to take time to really appreciate it, because it's not always easy for a lot of people. So bless your parents for their open minds, and their hearts for allowing you to express yourself that way. And twice now you've mentioned two people who, you know, had an influence, people you've looked up to and heard speak, and they sort of inspired or encouraged or motivated you to pursue this creative thing. But do you have any particular encounter, a physical encounter with anyone who you spoke to, could have been a creative, could have not, but that shaped or slightly changed your mind and more gave you like a push into this creative thing, or an encouragement to continue doing what you're doing? Any kind of interaction that's almost, maybe for lack of a better word or phrase, changed your creative journey?
Always, all the time. If I'm to speak of the creative people, there's a guy called Mark Moshiva from Namibia. He's part of a rap trio called Black Vulcanite.
Okay.
Mark is an exceptional lyricist, and I think for Mark, it's not so much just him being incredible as a lyricist, as a rapper, but what he represents in being very, very left, very other, you know.
Okay.
Mark is, I don't think he's hit 30 yet. If he has, it's probably 30, you know.
Okay.
Definitely under 35, but he has a PhD in computer science. Mark loves skateboarding. Mark has multiple, you know, rap albums under his name.
Wow.
Mark is yeah, he loves anime. He's obsessed with Akira. You know, I fell in love with Akira because of him. So it's what he represents. Like, and Mark is incredibly conscious. You know, he talks about. He has one of his lines. He says, "This is not Afrophysics. This is not astrophysics. More like Afrophysics."
That's pretty lit.
Lines like
that's pretty dope.
Yeah,
that's pretty dope.
Yeah, he says, I hope they write that I was righteous. I hope they write that the kid was writing with arthritis at night with the bleeding pen, with the power to make soldiers from civilians. Now it might really him. Ooh. You know, so yeah, Mark has always been that guy because he's like a real life. Well, Pharrell is real, but he's in the same manner I look at people like Pharrell. I can look at him and I can say, like, you know, you did that. I can connect. You are within this community, but like the world is existing in black and white, and you know you live in color. Mm-hmm. So Mark, just the confidence and courage to be self. Mm-hmm. Who else? But yeah, man. I mean, there's one time someone who's non-creative. There's a lady called Rumbi. Mm-hmm. I met her when I was in Lindo for school, and at the time I was sort of going through a process. I was going through some challenges, mm-hmm. and there's a place I would sit every single day, and I'll just write. Mm-hmm. And I kid you not, I would see a star at a 45-degree angle. It sounds so crazy, but I'll see it in broad daylight.
Crazy,
you know. So yeah, very crazy. When you tell people these things, they think
you're tripping.
You know, but I would see every single day. I'd see that star. On this particular day, though, I didn't see the star, and I was just going through, you know, the waves of my emotions, and I said, God, I don't want to write. I don't want to talk to you. Like, I'm not even gonna bother, but I need you. Wow. I need you right now. I wouldn't even consider it a prayer. I was just talking and, you know, but talking to God. And just after I said that, this woman passes me, and she went to sit about 100 meters away from me. And I always used to say something in me, but I realized it's the Holy Spirit that said, "SHALdo, go and talk to that woman."
Wow.
I went to talk to that woman. Now, you know, as I sat there, I started now trying to rationalize certain things. You know, the first thing I said to myself, well, she's a woman. She might not understand. She might not understand, you know, where you're coming from. She might feel like you're trying to make a move on her.
Yeah.
2, you're in a foreign land. What is the probability that she's going to understand you? You might want to express in Shona sometimes. Sometimes we best express ourselves when we're in our feels, you know.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk a certain way.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, she might not understand. And then a big one, I said, you know, flawed as I may be, my faith is a big part of me. And you know, I'd want to be guided by someone who's just as spiritually inclined and not religious, spiritual. So these are thoughts that I'm processing in my mind, but I'm processing them as I'm walking towards her. And when I got to her, I just sat down and said, "Hey, my name is such and such, you know, kind of going through some things, and I just wanted someone to talk to. I hope you don't mind." It's like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." I sat down, and one, she was a Zimbabwean, so she absolutely understood, you know, what was going on.
Mad.
2, she was there also because she was in the fields, and she also wanted someone to talk to.
Mad,
and 3,
bro.
her faith was a crucial part of her life as well. So like all those questions that I had, ticked, like, bolato, no problem.
Wow.
So we had a grand conversation, you know. Then when I got home, I started writing. I started writing about the experience. And I started shaking when I realized, you know, before I met her, my prayer was, "God, I don't want to talk. I just need you." And I genuinely believe God came in the form of Rumbi, you know. So I started shaking as I was writing when I was back home. I'm like, damn, you know, I sat next to God. I looked into God's eyes. I had a conversation with God. And then I hugged God before I came back home. and I feel so much better.
Mm.
And here I am writing about it now. I was like, wow. And I remember one of the things that then remained clear was my love and light and my interpretation of it, as far as my faith goes, it needs to be so solid that I can be in positions of giving that to other people.
Wow.
Where they can, whether they are aware of it or not, I can be that angel to them. I can be, God can really use me and go to them through me.
Yeah. I think that's
so every day, man, for as long as we're intentional about it, there's a lot of influences all around.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I think Rumdi's story is definitely one that you can never forget and constantly share.
Never.
And like you said, if we're intentional about it, intentionality is a very big thing. If we're intentional about it, there's constantly ways God's always like speaking to us or trying to reach out to us. If we can just take time to slow down and make ourselves available, we can always constantly be encouraged. And we can also do the same to others, like you said, to give ourselves and be, someone else's encouragement. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable about that. It's pretty cool. It's actually pretty
sure.
Cool. Okay, I've got 2 more questions left, and I just want to say thank you so much again for being here and taking time. It's an absolute pleasure sitting down with you and hearing how you think and kind of getting to know about the man behind the creativity. It's absolutely amazing. It's absolutely awesome.
Man, thanks to you for having me.
I appreciate it. I really do. But you mentioned something in another video of yours about education and how you aren't really a big fan and you don't necessarily find anything wrong with it, but it's like, the education system that we know of today is pretty flawed in itself, and it's got its limitations, and they don't really give provisions to a lot of other kids. It's either straight A's or nothing. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. That's the kind of world we live in now. But my question is, do you feel like one can be 100% creative and 100% successful in their creativity without having to seek an education for it? Mainstream education for it, that is.
100% creative and, sorry, can you come again?
Do you think someone can be 100% creative, 100% successful in their creativity without seeking any form of mainstream education?
Oof. That's, boy. Damn, man, you ask difficult questions.
This is all inspired by your poetry, so I think these are the thoughts and things you leave people with after you posted this stuff.
Wow. Man, I'm leaving people with migraines, aren't I?
You definitely are.
I think so, but I think learning is dynamic.
Okay.
So I love education. I love learning. I think we never stop learning. Mm-hmm. I love knowledge. I love experience and what experience teaches us. But the systems that inform that, like schools, I'm not really in agreement with certain structures that are in place.
Okay.
A question that I ask myself, this probably happens in a lot of countries around the world. Mm-hmm. But in Zimbabwe, for instance, if someone is to go to high school, they need to have a certain amount of grades that are like grand. You've got schools that are actually very particular about having A students and just B students for enrollment. And my question is, if the whole essence of learning is you getting enlightened, that supposes that there's darkness, so you're in need of that light. Now, if you turn away those who are unaware, like who's gonna teach them? Isn't that the whole essence of education?
Wow.
Taking people who are unaware and enlightening them about something.
Yeah.
But more than that, in the sort of world that we live in, I think we're a lot less concerned about certificates of knowledge. Right. That's what I call them. I may call them degrees and what. In one of my lines, I even say, certificates of knowledge. That's what they are. In one of my poems, I say that got a master's degree, but you've mastered life to no degree.
Yep, I love that line. I love that line.
You know, the world is a lot more concerned about, you know, rewarding and exchanging value with people that have certain skill sets, you know, people that know something. My very first internship, they said to me, I remember there's a function that we had to attend, and I had like these short locks. I said, my hair is a bit of a mess. Ooh, would that be a problem? How do I need to dress? They said, my guy, here we are a lot more concerned about what you offer, what's coming out of your head, than we are concerned about how you dress and whatnot. But just wear a blazer and a formal shirt, jeans or whatever, that's cool. Your hair, it's cool, you know? So I think we need that shift. And yeah, man, for me, it's the manner in which we are educating. That's what I'm against. But educating in itself, it's a must. I love education. I have some of the most beautiful conversations with. Just today, I was talking to someone and I was saying I have really amazing conversations with lecturers, professors. It fascinates me, you know. I'd like to think I have a certain level of appeal to people who are intellectual. They just really fascinate me, and I'm hungry to know more. I'm hungry for knowledge. So like you know, I'm not mad at that.
I get you. I think what I'm getting here is that the concept of education in itself is not a problem, but it's the systems that are in place to enforce it that are kind of getting twisted, which makes sense.
I'll tell you. I'll just to add, it's you can't see the twinkle twinkle in the sky unless it's dark outside.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
And I think education is that twinkle twinkle. It's that star. And we just bodies of darkness. But the moment we come into interaction with education, we realize, oh man, this void space that we're in, they're stars. And you can really shine. You can really find yourself. You can really do things. And you know, you come into interaction with other stars. Now, you know, we've got constellations or whatever, if we would use a metaphor, for instance. I think that's what education should do. You know, so much so I think schools are an excellent institution of capitalism. For me, it's absolutely crazy that you need to pay a certain amount of money to be educated. You know, and you're plugged back into the system. So it's, what do we do? You know, you are born. Go to school. After you go to school, you graduate. After you graduate, you meet someone. You have babies. You're married. Hopefully, we're assuming. Have babies. Cycle continues. You know, it's so even looking at the manner in which we've been educating, I'll talk of nothing against them, but if for the past 20 years we've been teaching the exact same thing, it's just, you know, we're teaching about theories and principles that dead white men wrote ages ago. And so they get their certificate of knowledge, they're capped, you know, their degree, they're professional, they yada yada yada. Another person it happens. There's no change in that system. We're producing the exact same person, plugging them into the system, but we expect changes, we expect innovation, we expect different ways of thinking. You know, what are we doing? And then you've got in my experience in school, people such as myself, oh man, I get really emotional about this. You've got the science class, you've got the commercial class, and you've got the arts class. And they ranked in that manner, in that order: science, commercials, arts. So that's
literally the conversation that people have.
Right?
Unfortunately.
So someone like myself, you know, I had to work hard to be in the science class because there was a certain perception and a certain prestige that came with that. And I made it to the science class because, you know, I'd work, yeah. But I was supposed to be in the arts class. I was supposed to be doing literature, not chemistry, because that's who I am. So it's all these things, and I think, you know, and it's not even just with artists; it's really anyone. Let's recognize certain interests and let's build on them. I love, you know, Minister Kirsty Coventry, that her family recognized early on that this girl loves the water. they invested in that.
Yeah.
So imagine if structures within the community were set up for me to be able to be me.
Yeah.
Where I would have been by now,
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was quite emotional. I will not lie. But also a lot of facts and truths in that as well. And I think there definitely needs to be some sort of structure, some sort of system that allows younger people not to always be in the mainstream education system.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot out there in sports, arts, be it anything creative. There's a lot that we are not being afforded as young people to be able to express ourselves.
Yeah.
And by the time we grow up and leave college, we're so fed up in trying to do this thing we're so passionate about, we just give up on it, which is pretty sad to see. It's actually pretty sad to see, So I definitely hear you, man. I hear you. Education in itself is not a problem. It's just the systems and the structures that are put in place.
The structures, and I think also in the context of Zimbabwe, there's my ex, so she's a performance artist.
Okay.
And when I spent, very lovely girl, when I was with her, there's certain things I just started learning. She's also like, she's a bit of a legacy baby. Her parents were educators. Her mom was heavily invested in the arts, and she's still an educator to this day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's traveled the world, and her primary art form is dance.
Okay.
She's been places. Do you know what she did? She just started plugging into the right, whether it was colleges or theater schools or whatnot. So these things are there, but they're not talked about as much.
We're not exposed to it. We're definitely not exposed to it.
We're not. So, Goody, we shouldn't have access. Like, ballet should not be outside of the school. Because there's the kid at Rukumbare might not know of a ballet academy. SHALdo might not know of a certain writers class, wherever.
Writers association,
wherever you are. Precisely. Like, can we have these things available in mainstream public schools? And we are exposed to these things early on. Not someone like my ex. We'll call it ex for now. Someone like X comes from a background where they're exposed, they're aware of these things. So naturally, she plugs into her interest, and she builds so much so she's traveled the world. She's earned money, she's done things for herself. Kudos to her. But like, can we make those things? Because it's very basic things, I'd like to believe. Can we make those things available to everybody else? I speak under correction, but I think Mokomba is arguably the best touring musical act out of Zimbabwe.
I think so.
I think prior to the whole COVID thing, I think they're the best touring. But nobody knows Mokomba like that. So it's like, again, even getting into all like media and whatnot. One of the reasons why I'm really passionate about media, mainstream media, is because I think there's stories that we need to tell. There's a narrative that we need to push, and it needs to be in these domains that have like massive reach to people. Where we make people aware of the possibilities. Like, people need to know Mokomba can do a good 8 months in Europe. They need to know that, and they're being paid for it. Like, yes, we love Ja Praiser, we love Winky, amazing artists, but also know that there's this alternative act. They're not even mainstream. They're doing a good 8 months, and they're getting paid for what they do. They're in Europe. There's that possibility. I would want kids to be aware of that.
To have it be an option for them as well. Choose. This is what I would like to do with my life.
And be beyond just an option. Like, if you decide to be a doctor, sure, go ahead. But you need to know that if you do decide this, it's possible. In the same way, that if you become a doctor, chances are you could go and practice in another country, in a different continent. Can we have the same for art?
We definitely need that, and I hope that we can get that kind of mindset, that we can get more people like you in the Zimbabwean creative community, just who can come together and unify and in that thought process to get something rolling. And I know we can. It's something that we need to work towards and keep praying about as well. That God can guide us and help change and shift people's mindset on that. And I really appreciate your thoughts on that as well. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, bro.
But I just have one more question, just to round us off. And that is to do with the name that you are recognized by, which is SHALdo. What inspired that? What does it mean? When did that come about? Was it always the one, or you used to be called something else and then you switched it up? Tell us the backstory about the name you go by.
I like how you've asked that question. Usually people ask, "Is SHALdo your real name?" And I always respond, and my response is always, SHALdo is a real name.
It is a real name.
It is a real name.
Yeah.
No, what people ask is, what is your real name? And I'm like, SHALdo is a real name.
It is a real name.
Yeah. My birth name is Nyasha.
Okay.
Nyasha Tapiwa. That's my birth name. I have my first name is two names. Funny enough.
I like that.
Yeah. But I was madly obsessed with football when I was younger. Okay. And I loved the Brazilian Ronaldo. I dubbed him the real Ronaldo.
The real Ronaldo.
The real Ronaldo. I was madly obsessed with Ronaldo. So much so I started calling myself SHALdo. So corny. So corny.
Okay.
And
oh man, that's like, pretty cool.
No, it's not cool, man. It's corny.
It is.
I was young though, so I started calling myself SHALdo. But I was like, SHALdo is a little too heavy. It's long. It's like, So I said, you know what? We're gonna drop NYA and we're just gonna stick with SHALdo. So in primary, I just started calling myself SHALdo.
And people responded to that, and people just called them. They started calling.
Dude, it's stuck. It's stuck, and so much so. My dad calls me SHALdo. My dad doesn't say Nyasha. If my dad says Nyasha, when he says Nyasha, I know I'm in trouble. The way mothers can be like Nyasha tapua Mapuranga, if just dad, just Nyasha alone, like, oh my god,
late. It's late.
It's trouble. So yeah, it's stuck. Family started calling me SHALdo. Friends started calling me SHALdo. I got into high school and people always assumed SHALdo was my actual name.
Crazy. That's
when
how
they'll see like my when they'll see my books, on the book covers we used to write, full name,
surname.
They'll be like, so like people outside of my class would be like, what? That's your name? So, but yeah, in high school it stuck. Then when I started performing, I wanted to have a name. I wanted a name that is not separate to who I am. I was always iffy about having stage names and, so I wanted something that connects with my identity already.
Yep.
But I wanted to be able to separate my private life from what I was getting into with the poetry and whatnot. Like I never share anything about my family. You'll never see faces ever. Mm-hmm. You'll never hear voices. Mm-hmm. Keep my private life real private. So I wanted something that can give me that separation, but where it's still me, in the same manner.
Still you. Yep.
For sure. In the same manner, you're a son to some. You're a friend to others. You're
a brother to others.
Brother to others, but you're still the same person. So I wanted that. So I sat down one day and I really thought hard and long about it. And then I said, you know what? I've got it. And then I said to God, you know what? The gifts that you bestowed upon my life, whenever you tell me to do, wherever you tell me to go, I shall do. And I was like, so the name is going to remain because people already know SHALdo. That's my name. So just the gifts and purposes you have upon my life, tell me to go, tell me what to do, I shall do. Hence I spell it SHAL in caps, DO lowercase. And then, so SHALdo stuck. So whenever I perform, like back in the day, whenever I used to perform, I'd always say, I hope I don't forget the lines. I'd always say, Yeah, I would say dreams of escalating myself to heights where I'm highly elevated and esteemed by Elohim. A bear witness and notice, verbally bubbly, juggle jingly words served hot on the regular. But to call me hot is false. He never burns me out, yet upon my life he has poured down his REIGN as King Supreme. I am just a vessel. He says, go, and I shall do. The name is SHALdo.
Damn.
So that's the story with the name in a nutshell. Yeah.
That is it. I love that. I absolutely love that, man. And I think I'm just hooked already. I think while you're on here already, you might as well just drop us a poem. Just a quick something for the people, just so that they know how lit you are, my guy.
How lit you are. Okay,
please,
let's see.
Bro, please. I really appreciate that.
I'm going through my phone right now. I want to see if I want to.
There's this one about governments, and oh my word, they didn't know what government. I was like,
that one. That one is pretty long though. Hey,
it's deep. I think you split when you released it. You released it in parts, and then I heard you say the whole thing, and it was really long. I was like, what the heck? Oh, really? That's what that is. You can pick a part of it. You don't have to do the whole thing. But that poem is fire, man.
Let me go. My dark-skinned brothers broke bread with the white mask masters, eating steak and cheese like bourgeoisie while I was sweating pointlessly, salivating for mere crumbs, fasting, eating nothing but mastered seeds in the land of milk and honey. I was praying for manna, or maybe man. You see, I'm home and home is free of Pharaoh's hand. I was promised land, a sense of paradise, but society is a paradox. I wonder if folks in government knew what govern meant. They said peace, equality, and prosperity, but I don't even have independence. I am in dependence. Respect and honor to the forefathers, though. The problem isn't them, the prequel. The problem is we, the people that seek all the enslaving delusions of Mr. Fariskin, built an interest in paradigms that feed him and the sequel of our story. I'm getting the lines.
No, it's fine. It's fine. that was lit. That was more than enough for people to go and SHALdo on Twitter, on Instagram, everywhere. People just need to go find you and subscribe to your work because it's absolutely golden. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you taking time again to sit down with me and be on the show. And I hope to meet you soon. I have to meet you soon. I have to meet you. Maybe work on some stuff.
When you come around, together. Man, we host you. Yeah.
Maybe work on some stuff together. And I really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Luca, before you go, hey, I've got a question of my own.
Ask away.
I noticed the Megapixels.
Okay.
That's like the, quite poetic in itself. How you spell it. It's like Megapixels associated with photography, obviously.
Yes,
but it's
100%.
Megapixels.
So mega, I love how you picked up on it. A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't pick up on it. But I mean, you're a poet, you're a writer, so I'm not surprised that you did. But the mega, it's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. The mega is big. We gotta go big or go home. Everything that we do, everything that I do is gonna be big. Big, 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 big. And then pick, of course, it's pictures, right? But the souls is about the people. So what I do is do it big. And what's that? It's the photos, it's the photography, it's all the creativity. But in and amongst that, it's always going to be about the people. It's always going to be about me caring more about the people, putting the people before me. And that's what I live by. It's doing it big, doing what I love, and doing it for the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know why I love? Do you know why I love that as well? Like, in addition to what you said, there's something real mega about you and your mega picks souls. I don't know if that's
dang!
That's how I thought of it.
Days. My days. Mega picks souls.
I'll send you my invoice.
I love that. Oh yeah, send through your invoice.
Send
through your bank
and just tell people. You tell people that in the story. Just pay me for it.
I was like, I used to say, but then I sat down with this one poet, and he said, And
No,
that's
no,
what I
you don't
go
even
by
mention the
now.
poet. You just you don't even mention the poet. Just like, it hit me one day.
It hit me
And
one
yeah.
day. It did not hit me one day. You came up and you told me straight up. Now I appreciate it. I've never thought about it that way. But I think ultimately everything that I do, and just like you, and I think that's why I was so inspired by your work and seeing your workflow and seeing what you do, is that I want to be able to do everything that I do in glorification of God. I want every aspect of my creative work, everyone that I reached out to and sat down with, that they can see some piece of God's love and God's grace through what I do.
Yeah.
And if I can accomplish that, then I think I'm very satisfied with the work that I'm doing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Love that. Hey, man, big thanks for having me. Hey.
100%. Thank you so much.
Stay safe out there.
Same to you. Bless, man.
All right. Cheers.